Well, guys, conference championship week is in the books, and there's officially a room full of people sweating bullets in Grapevine, Texas, because we have three teams that have a legit case for the last playoff spot, and two of them are going to have their worlds turned upside down here in about 13 hours. We're ready to break it all down right here live on the Three Technique.
One man. Goodbye. Hello, Heisman.
20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 45. There goes Davis. Oh, my God. Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
They get it back now to the 30. They're down to the 20. All the band is out on the field. He's going to go into the end zone.
Four-man Alabama rush. Got him. No, they didn't. Oh, my gracious.
Yep.
How about that?
Welcome in, one and all. We are live here on Saturday night of championship week. We are just finishing up the Florida State Seminoles, wrapping up a 13-0 perfect season. We're watching them celebrate live right now. And guys, there's a lot of chalk, but I think the biggest domino this week was the one that fell, the one that could send this whole race into absolute chaos in Atlanta. That domino fell with Alabama knocking off Georgia earlier today, 27-24. We will talk about those games here in due time. But, guys, can you remember a conference championship week in the playoff era with as much drama as this one? Because I'm struggling to think of a time that, we go into the last, hours leading up to the selection show, and we truly don't know who the fourth team is going to be.
I think you have to go all the way back to the first playoff, right? Between Ohio State, TCU, and Baylor. All three teams were decidedly deserving. Maybe Ohio State was the least deserving of the team, at least in a lot of people's mind. And so that was certainly a shock. But no, not since that first playoff do I think we've had this much drama. I don't think the playoff committee has had to work at all in the decade since. They've just been able to sit back and kind of let process of elimination happen. And this year, they don't get to do that. And I think they've been exposed on their lack of touch with the rest of the football world. And it's going to make for a comedy show tomorrow. I don't think they're going to get it right. I think they're going to have some brutal defense of those playoff teams tomorrow. And I tell you what, I'm not going to get to break it down live with you guys, but I am very much anticipating the clown show that I think we're getting ready to witness.
Yeah, it's going to be chaos. You can honestly say, and again, it looks like it should be three guaranteeds, but the way that some people have been talking, I'm not sure that you can guarantee Florida State with the way the committee might think of them. So, look, I know what I think, and we'll talk about that obviously later in the show. But I think we have to be prepared for a world where none of this goes the way that any of us are expecting it, and we get just absolute chaos and anarchy. So I'm excited to break that down. I'm excited to see what happens.
They're going to be too deserving. I know that's a buzzword right now that the committee does not like, but they're going to be two deserving, valid teams that have a valid point for that number 4 spot that aren't in tomorrow. And I think that is, why I chose my header name today. Let's just do 12 teams this year. Let's figure it out. We'll get the TV networks drawn up. We'll live stream it here on our channel. Who cares? We'll figure it out here. But guys, before we get into the games on the field today, let's talk about the sponsors that bring the show to us. We're brought to you first and foremost by the Transfer Portal CFP, one of the best places to get all your news from the college football world. It's articles written by fans for fans with professional touch and just amazing coverage from coast to coast. We've got guys watching the FCS playoffs as well, breaking that down. We've got every flavor that you could possibly want. You can look out for our headlines and review article that'll come out after the CFP rankings are revealed. And we're also brought to you by Home Field Apparel. Guys, Christmas shopping season is upon us. What better way to gift the loved ones in your life than giving them some awesome collegiate apparel from their favorite team? Or just a cool logo, right? Like, that's the beautiful thing about Home Field is, so many of the shirts that we love from Home Field are not from our favorite team. There's amazing designs, tons of options that you can choose from. Shirts, bomber jackets, heck, even the stickers and little knickknacks like that are good stocking stuffers. So Use our code 3TechPod to get 15% off your first order, or click the link on our Twitter page to make sure that you get 15% off your returning order. All that at Home Field. Make sure you get that Christmas shopping done ASAP and do it the best place, Home Field Apparel. But guys, bills are paid. We're moving on. Let's talk about the games on the field first. So Garrett just flashed something that reminded me. Shout out to our Jimmys and Joes. We just reached a amazing milestone, 420 subscribers on the YouTube channel. You guys are doing a fantastic job sharing that around. We've had a few videos go, really well this week. Hit the algorithms well, and lots of comments, lots of engagement, lots of new subscribers. So shout out to the 420 Jimmys and Joes that are enjoying this YouTube channel. Make sure that you're, tuned in on live shows. Make sure that you got the bell clicked so that you get notified when we go live on Saturday nights or tomorrow, because we have a live Sunday special edition reaction show right after the college football playoff. Garrett, what time is that one starting tomorrow?
We're going to be going pretty much right after it starts, or right after the show starts, right? So when the selection show starts, we're going to be going pretty shortly after that. Going to be a little bit light off the beginning, but we will have a couple of guests that'll filter in through the day, through the kind of mid-morning, afternoon, and we'll be filtering some people in to talk about what they think and talk about what they thought should have happened, and roast the committee and roast the teams that should have made it and didn't make it and everybody else. So we're just really excited for it, and I'm excited to share that with you guys and just hang out for a little bit. Not a formal pod with loads of prep like we normally do. We're truly just doing a live hangout. Kind of similar to what you might see out of like a Twitter Spaces. And so we will be talking about it. We'll have some good guests, but we're going to be just hanging out with you guys. And so share it with your friends. Come right back here, go to sleep after this is over. And then, pop back up in the morning, do whatever you got to do on a Sunday morning, and then come join us again.
I love it. Garrett's going to be running point on that show for us. Lots of fun guests from, not just the 3Tech family, but branching out a little bit. Some other podcast hosts. I'm really excited. It's going to be really fun to live react to that tomorrow. Guys, let's talk about the games on the field tonight, though, and then we'll get into the playoff scenarios here towards the end of the show, because I know that's what everybody's wondering about. But let's start in Atlanta, Georgia, because this was the biggest domino that could have possibly fallen conceivably, right? Like this is the biggest upset of the week, the biggest domino to fall. Alabama 27, Georgia 24. And guys, this was one, where at the start of the game, Georgia forces a 3-and-out. They score relatively easily on their first drive. But Alabama was kind of in control of this game after that. From that point on, Georgia scores late to cut the game to 3. But even that last drive, Alabama got exactly what they wanted, with Jalen Milroe just kind of taking over, running for a couple first downs. He had 192 yards and 2 touchdowns to the air. The Bulldogs did keep him in check for most of the game on the ground, but like I said, last drive of the game, especially down the stretch, he was able to kind of get whatever he wanted. Georgia was hobbled coming into this game, right? We saw Carson Beck get shaken up a couple times. He looked like he was battling something. We all know about Brock Bowers being injured, but Bama had a couple players go down too. Dallas Turner and Kool-Aid McKinstry go down on the same play in the third quarter, I believe, as Georgia's driving. But just a fantastic back and forth battle between two of the nation's best teams, two of the most talented teams in the country. The game really swung mightily when Bama scored right before the half. There's a lot of controversy about a catch. Isaiah Bond makes a catch on 4th down. They zoom in on the replay on the CBS broadcast. It looks like it's bobbling. It looks like the ball touches the ground, possibly. But we don't get a review of that 4th and 4, and Bama goes on to score a couple plays later. I know Georgia fans are up in arms about that, especially since they had one that wasn't nearly as close get stopped for review a little bit later. But guys, as you took this one in today, Alabama made a statement today. And would you guys call this the best win of the season up to this point?
I certainly would. And listen, I wasn't able to watch this game as in depth as you guys are. So, Garrett, I'll kind of cede it to you in just a second. Might ask a question or two, but to me, it absolutely is. Georgia has been my top team really since midseason. I think since they drubbed Kentucky, since they drowned the Wildcats in the bathwater. they've been that top team. And Michigan has been right there as well. They certainly, solidified their case to be the number one team, right? The top team after a 26-0 win over Iowa in the Big Ten championship game. But to me, Georgia was the best team. And so for Alabama to come in to take away what Georgia does so well, which is throw the ball downfield and do it prolifically. And then on top of that, not just limit the passing game, but hold the Bulldogs offense in totality, keep them under 100 yards rushing, force a turnover, keep Carson Beck off his game all night long. You made Kirby Smart uncomfortable, and you took the Bulldogs out of their element. And once again, I think we're seeing Nick Saban continues to show why he is still the king of college football. To me, this is without a doubt the best win in college football to this year. And it makes this a very uncomfortable decision when you talk about, okay, could a team on the last weekend of the college football playoff for the first time ever jump 4 spots, leapfrog other deserving teams, including a team in Texas that beat them, to get into the playoff? It would be very hard to leave Alabama out at this point.
Yeah, Mitch, I think, you said it pretty much perfect. It's going to be almost impossible to keep the 12-1 SEC champion out of the playoff. This is a tough league to play in. It's a tough league to win in. And Alabama, against all odds, it seems, did it. I mean, not many people were picking them to even win the division going into the year. Most people thought it was going to be LSU dancing back and making their way back to Atlanta. But Alabama, they figured it out. And I want to take a second to pause. Can we acknowledge that, in my opinion, this is the most impressive coaching job that Nick Saban has done so far in his career? To take a team of Alabama players who had just you have to think about it this time, beginning of the season, you're coming off of losing your best player on offense and defense and trying to figure out where that leadership comes from, where that production is going to come from. And your quarterback, Jalen Milroe, we all saw it at the beginning of the season. It wasn't that good. He could run. He could kind of throw a deep ball. He really wasn't a polished quarterback. And through the year, Nick Saban only put him in positions to win. You're outside of the Texas game early, where I think he got kind of ambushed and was not ready for that spot. Outside of that game early, they just put him in positions to win. They gave him the week off the next week and said, you're not playing, you're going to sit, you're going to watch. And since then, he's been slowly improving and slowly getting better, and he's just found ways to win. And that is not on him being just an elite athlete, which he is. It is on the job that Nick Saban has done, getting his guys coached up, getting people in a position to win. I am so impressed with the job that Nick Saban has done this year. This might be his most, like I said, his most impressive coaching job in his career. And I think this is solidifying him as one of the greatest coaches, not just in college football, but maybe sports history, with the job that he's been able to do at Alabama, and the job this year especially. So here they are again, the Alabama Crimson Tide, SEC champions, and we're really talking about leaving them out. And I mean, look, you can say that they're 8, and I think that's the committee's fault for leaving them that far down. And you can make the argument about Texas and all that. This is a very different Alabama team than Texas beat earlier in the season. That's not to take anything away from that win, but this is a very different Alabama team than they were earlier. So when I look at this, it's really hard to justify leaving Alabama out of the playoffs after this win. At best, you can say that they have a comparable record, and I guess you lean towards the head-to-head. But, I mean, at worst, for a Texas fan, or, if you're a Georgia fan trying to justify staying in even though you just lost, I mean, at worst, you start to have to look at this and say, look, this is a team that found a way to win down the stretch, looked pretty dang good doing it, and survived in Auburn and then survived here in Atlanta to find a way to push themselves across and over the top. It's a heck of a job. It's a heck of a coaching job. This is a heck of a team. And I'm going to eat my crow because I didn't think they'd be very good this year. And I, middle of the season, said they'd have like 4 losses. I was totally wrong. Totally wrong. How dare I doubt Nick Saban? I'm never going to make that mistake again for the rest of my life. I'm not going to count his teams out. Even after he retires, I might say, hey, he's got some ability to move the pieces in the background, be a puppet master, okay? Until that man's cold in the ground, that man's going to keep winning, and Alabama's always a threat. So it's going to be fun to see, and I hope they get a chance to go win a national title this year. That would be really fun to watch.
Yeah, the rumors of the demise of Bama's dynasty have been greatly exaggerated this year.
Exaggerated.
Yeah, we were pronouncing time of death on Nick Saban's run at Alabama after that South Florida game. And you're absolutely right, Garrett. This is, one of the best coaching jobs, if not the best coaching jobs he's done in his storied career to get Alabama to this point, to the point that they are on the cusp of a college football playoff, potentially returning to the playoff after a 1-year hiatus. So it's going to be fascinating. We're going to break down what we think the committee will do here a little bit later on in the episode after we talk about what happened on the field. But, the recurring theme that you're going to hear tonight is there are 3 teams with a legit case, and it's going to just depend on how the committee's feeling tomorrow, right? So, conference championships matter, head-to-head results matter. I would argue that conference championships and what conference you win probably matters a little bit more than a head-to-head game in September. But I don't know. Like, who knows what the committee is going to, have at the top of their ledger tomorrow. But we'll find out, as we move on from this game. It's going to be fascinating to see just the lobbying that takes place, too, between now and then. I know every coach is going to get interviewed. We've already seen Sarkisian. We've already seen Kirby Smart plead their cases to the media post game. We saw Greg Sankey basically say that it's living in fantasy land to think that the SEC is going to get left out of this playoff. I tend to lean that way, but who knows? Like, we're literally 12 hours away from having any sort of understanding on what the committee's thinking.
Oh, and I'll say one thing before we move on. And again, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, we're going to have our discussion here in a minute. Boo Corrigan has set up this playoff committee, as I alluded to off the top, for failure because he has refused to say anything this year. All he said today when Reese Davis was asking, what is the procedure? What is kind of your order of operations? Is there a team that you unequivocally have as better than the rest? And all he would say is, well, we're watching the games today. We're looking forward to watching the games. But so clearly from the rankings leading up to this week, this final week, they haven't been watching the games. They haven't been thinking about the college football landscape the way that the rest of us, quite frankly, are. I think it's been relatively cut and dry. And yes, you're going to have deserving teams left out, but they have put themselves so far up a creek without a paddle that I think they can't possibly get it right tomorrow. And I'm curious to hear what Boo Corrigan has to say. Finally, he's going to have to say something. And I just don't see a world in which he gets it right. I think we are on the verge of maybe losing a whole lot of trust in this system, even as we head to 12 teams that I think could be dangerous down the line. Maybe that's dramatic, but that's kind of where I feel like we are.
Well, Mitch, you're touching on it, but it's because they can't pick a side between deserving and best.
Yes.
They can't pick their side. And they've been writing it so that they can keep things interesting, right? The only reason they were talking about, oh, well, maybe this, oh, maybe that, is so they could put Oregon at 5, so that if Oregon somehow beat Washington, they could jump up, and then Washington can maybe drop a little bit just to make sure that they can maybe stay in if things didn't go the way they wanted it to. And they won't pick a side between you either deserve it because of your resume or you're one of the best teams and we think you deserve to be in. They won't pick a side. And so tomorrow, if you're, one of the 18, if you're 4 of the 8 teams, you're going to sit there and say, well, hang on a second here. I'm one of the best teams. Or you're going to say, well, hang on a second here. I'm one of the most deserving teams. And you're going to be upset, and you're probably got a really good point. And so, maybe this is, sandbagging on purpose so that we'll like 12 teams more next year. And it's to get everybody off the 4-team,
bold strategy, Cotton.
Right. That it's like, hey, what if we screwed it up so big this year? They're going to be begging for 12 teams. And, they'll just keep doing that until we get to the 128 game, full season tournament or something like that, just so they can juice the ratings or something. But yeah, I'm just so over what this committee is. I'm so pumped for tomorrow to be able to watch this live and just be disgusted on camera. I'm so excited for this.
I think you're dead right. I think you are right. They cannot pick a side between deserving and best. That is exactly what they've done.
Mm-hmm. And they can't, they've backed themselves into a corner where no one is going to be happy. with the decision that they make, and I think that's the worst place that they could possibly be.
And for anyone who watches this, this is the conversation I've been having with just about everyone in the comment section of our Texas video that's kind of rolling this week. There have been so many people this week that have said, well, we deserve it because we beat Bama, or, well, we deserve it because we'll win the conference, or, oh, actually, we just need Florida State to lose this. And I just keep saying, like, yeah, you're probably right, but is the committee going to see it that way? Or is the committee going to find a way to leave you at 5 because they want the Alabama or the Georgia or the whoever else in? I don't know what they're going to say, but I have a feeling that some people are going to get real hurt and real offended over the way that this rolls tomorrow.
Well, the 18 playoff, or 12-team playoff, excuse me, there's going to be years that we think it's silly because the teams that are barely getting in just have no reason to be competing for a national championship. I fully admit that as a pro expansionist, but the 12-team playoff was made for such a time as this, right? Where we have a legitimate claim all the way down to.
Then there's no question.
Right. They prove it on the field. And, I would love to see Alabama play Texas again right now. Like, if we could line that up for next week, be the lead-in to Army-Navy at a neutral site, and that team gets the last spot in the playoff, I wish we could do that. But that's not the system we have right now. And, there's not going to be anybody, I think, that's 100% happy or satisfied come 11:30 or whenever they get around to announcing it tomorrow. So we'll see. We'll see Alabama. We'll see Georgia's fate. We'll see if the SEC gets completely left out in the cold. We'll give you our prediction on that here a little bit later in the episode. But guys, let's go to something that we are certain about. And that certainty is that the Washington Huskies earned their way into the playoff. Most deserving, best, doesn't matter when you go 13-0 and win a power conference championship. Maybe it does. We'll get into that in just a second. But for Washington, I don't think it's going to matter at all. They are locked and loaded. Even the ESPN playoff predictor that's, a troll graphic at best had them at 99%. And I think that's the best trolling they could do when I was watching a game earlier today. So the game on the field, the Huskies race out to a 20-3 lead Friday night and, just throwing haymakers at Oregon. The defense is stepping up. They get 2 3-and-outs right off the bat, put up 10 points, build that 20-3 lead. And then Oregon comes, clawing right back into it. They cash in on the 2-for-1 opportunity. They score right before and right after halftime. It's game on in the second half, but Washington just kept their offense on the field. Like, they had 10 of 15 on third down. Jalen McMillan being back was, fully healthy. I know he played against Washington State last week, but him being back and fully healthy, being that reliable safety blanket on third down was just huge for this offense. It looked like they found that extra gear that they were missing for so long, and they got it done on the ground as well. Dylan Johnson had a huge game, 28 carries, 152 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Also threw a passing touchdown out of the Wildcat. And, the 1-2 punch of Adunze and McMillan was just a dynamic receiving threat. But, guys, I think the bigger story was Washington's defense. They've been much maligned. They've been playing a lot better for about a month now. I've been beating that drum on this show to kind of watch out for the defense that's starting to turn a corner a little bit. They tied Oregon's lowest scoring output for the year. They held Oregon to 363 yards, which was their lowest output of the season. They held Bo Nix to his lowest passing output of the year. And they allowed just 3 of 10 on third downs, including starting the game with 2 3-and-outs that kind of set the tone. Guys, it was an impressive win last night. I don't think anyone outside of Seattle was really picking Washington to win this game, let alone maybe cover. I know a lot of people thought this was just going to be a breeze for Oregon straight into the college football playoff, but the Huskies found a way, and that's kind of been their mantra this year. Just find a way, get it done. They're 13-0. They're going to be going to their second college football playoff in program history. What's been the most impressive thing to you guys about this run that the Huskies are on this year?
I think it's their opportunistic tendencies. Listen, when you're a team that is not elite defensively, it can be really tough to string together winning streaks because, as we saw, offense can ebb and flow, and the offense ebbed at times during conference play, right? I mean, it was flowing during non-conference. We were feeling good. Huskies were, partying like it was 1991. And then Arizona State happened. And then you get into the teeth of that Pac-12 schedule. And all of a sudden it's like, I don't know if we can just survive and dodge and weave all the way to the college football playoff. But by golly, that's exactly what they've done. Trey, I mean, I want to turn it around to you as well. Like you have been beating that drum for the Washington defense. And early on in the season, I feel like I was kind of leading that charge right there with you. Like, talking about, hey, statistically, these guys aren't anything special, but you look past the numbers, you get off of paper and you see how talented this team is and how, yeah, they're allowing a lot of yards, but they're not allowing a lot of points. And they're opportunistic with the takeaways. They have 15 interceptions coming into this game. They get their 16th on a really weird play where the defender gets pushed out of bounds and then just like emerges from the sideline and Bo Nix throws it right to him. Like, they have felt like the team of destiny in that they are solidly coached. They're an old team. They're very, very talented, and they just continue to find ways to win. That to me is the most impressive thing, that you can continue to find that week in and week out.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, good.
I was going to say, I think my most impressive thing for Washington right now is they just keep winning. Like it's not any one thing that they do particularly well. I mean, obviously, we know what Penix can do. We know he's an elite passer. We know that offense can really get humming. But I mean, when I look at this team has some pretty clear deficiencies where they're not always very good at certain aspects of their game. But man, last night they showed up. Like, sometimes they get abused in the secondary and they don't tackle very well. But last night, their secondary played real good. They manned up with their men. They played good press conference. Jabbar Muhammad specifically had a freaking heck of a game, lining up, playing press, making life hell for those receivers over there. So that was impressive. That was a lot of fun. And then you look at what they're able to do, especially in the run game on offense. I was so impressed with their ability to run the football and be physical between the tackles to find their way upfield when they needed it. I mean, the way that they iced this game at the end was, it was a third down. It looked like they were going to just run this ball and, try to kick it and leave him with not a whole bunch of time. And instead, he just slashes, finds his cutback lane, takes off for like 20, 30 yards, and they iced it. That was it. That was the game. And so Washington's ability to kind of do what they need to given the situation and just find a way to win. It reminds me of another team that was making a big run this year late in their season, and that's the Texas Rangers. It reminds me a little bit of what the Rangers did. They weren't always perfect. There are some pretty clear deficiencies of that Rangers team, and they just kept winning. They just kept finding a way to win. And it, maybe you weren't convinced they were the best team in the country at any point in time, but by the time it was all said and done, they just stayed hot. They kept winning. So I think Washington's similar to this, that they might line up against someone that's better than them in the playoff, and they'll just find a way to win. I've just started to have that confidence that they can find a way to beat the team that's in front of them. And I think they're a fun team to watch. It's going to be a lot of fun to see what they draw for their first round matchup. I've been late to the bandwagon on this one. Not necessarily a Washington hater, just wasn't as big on them, but I might be, stamping my ticket for the bandwagon right before it takes off for the playoffs. So
you were in the Oregon camp, and it was a great camp to be in.
Oh, yeah, it was a great camp, and I enjoyed what Oregon was doing. And I think the thing that surprised me the most was just how much Washington flipped the script on them.
Yeah,
right? They flipped the script. Oregon was the more dominant team down the stretch in the trenches. That wasn't the case. Oregon was better in press coverage. Oregon was better in their secondary. That wasn't the case in this game. Yeah. Oregon was much better running the football. Irving wasn't a factor in this game. I think Johnson might have had a touchdown, but I mean, Dylan Johnson, he looked really good. And what Washington was able to do on the ground, it changed the script. It made it to where, they didn't technically outrush them, but they were way more effective on the ground, and they got the important runs more than Oregon did.
That's really said right there. They got the important yards. They stayed on the field on offense. They got Oregon off the field on offense, just stepped up when they needed to. And Garrett, there's no shame in picking Oregon in this game because Oregon looked like the better team ever since they lost in Seattle.
So I forgot to factor in the fact that maybe Washington didn't care about the other games on their schedule. And so they were just going to like kind of save it up and then turn it on at the very end. I didn't factor that in. And so, maybe it was playing up or down to their competition. Maybe it was just focus level. They had like one really impressive offensive game the entire back half of the season, and it was against Alex Grinch. So I don't know if you can call it an impressive offensive game. It's maybe just, we ran our plays really well and, sort of air drills, but it just, I don't know. It wasn't a team I was particularly impressed by down the stretch, but they turned it back on last night. And if they're going to turn this on, then who knows? We'll see what they can do. I think this team can go all the way if they're playing their best football. It's just what they're going to put out there and if they're going to be able to stay situationally as good as they were.
Yeah.
That's always the question with these teams that, kind of, I'm not going to say it's surprising that Washington went undefeated, with the talent they have, with the quarterback play that they have, but not the unexpected undefeated teams, right? The TCU up until conference championship weekend last year, heck, Florida State this year, right? You're waiting for the other shoe to drop, and sometimes it just doesn't drop, and they just ride it out. So we'll see what happens. Maybe we get Washington and Florida State in the first round in the semifinal, and we get to see who's the true team of destiny.
I was going to say, I think the big thing that I'm looking at for Washington down the stretch is if they can keep being physical up front. That was something that they did really well against Oregon, and it shut down some of those things. You're going to need that against a team like Michigan if you face them, against a team like if you get Bama, if you get, Georgia, if they make it in, if you get Texas, if they make it in, like all these teams are teams that can run the ball extremely well. I mean, Florida State has some of that in their game too. They're going to have to be physical up front like they were against Oregon. And if they can't do that, then it might be a short-lived playoff experience for them. If they can, watch out.
Well, let's move on to the team that we've hinted at, guys, the Big 12 championship. It was not a close game. Texas staked their claim. We said on the preview show this week that they needed to leave no doubt that they were a dominant team, and they did just that. They obliterate Oklahoma State 49-21. Quinn Ewers had 452 yards through the air, 4 touchdowns and just 1 interception. I think it's fair to say that that was the best performance of his career as a Texas Longhorn by far, with the stakes that were included in that game. The pressure was on, and he delivered, and the offense was humming from the get-go, but I think I was just as impressed about the defense, especially in the first half. Ollie Gordon, we thought he was going to come into this game angry, and he was. You could see by, his reaction to some of the plays in this game that he was an angry player in this one. He was held to just 34 yards on 13 carries. A lot of this was game script, but Oklahoma State ran the ball just 18 times the entire game. And
that's terrible.
That's your story right there, right? Because Oklahoma State was winning throughout the year when they realized that their best possible weapon was Ollie Gordon getting it done on the ground. I just want to shout out Garrett for coming in clutch and fixing my score that I messed up on that game real quick. I see you, Garrett. But listen, can't say enough about the Longhorns on both sides of the ball today. The offense was clicking. The defense held Oklahoma State in check. They just made the first half a disaster for the Pokes because Texas goes up 14-0 before the fans are even settled into their seats. And just when you think Oklahoma State might have a chance to get back in it, they force a turnover. Alan Bowman throws an interception. And that's basically all she wrote. Oklahoma State put a couple drives together here and there, but this one was all Texas. And this was exactly what they needed to do. But guys, as we look into, shifting the narratives, shifting the conversation to who's actually going to get in, was this enough in your mind to show that they deserve to be in the top 4?
So it's a great question.
It is a great question. It's the $1 million question.
It is the $1 million question. And again, we're going to get to our breakdown. We have our brackets that we've created. I'm hoping Garrett fixes an error in mine. If not, it's fine. I'll ad lib. But to just continue to set that up, the answer is yes. For anybody that says that Texas did not do enough is not a deserving recipient of a playoff spot or a top 4 ranking. I don't think you watched Texas football this year. Did they have some close games? Yes, absolutely. Were they always one of the 4 best teams throughout the course of the season? No. But point to 4 other teams that consistently performed at an elite level like Texas did. I don't think you can do that. Now, I don't know that guarantees Texas's spot. And again, I think we'll talk more about this when we reveal our rankings, our brackets. But for me, I don't think that leaving Texas out is the right call. Will it happen? I don't know. And that's where the debate is.
Yeah, I'm torn. I'm torn on this one because, again, like we said earlier, there's the deserve it versus best 4.
Mhm.
And when I look at that, I think Texas is kind of stuck because if you're asking about just do they deserve it, the problem that they're facing right now is that they're 12-1, not 13-0. And that's automatically putting them behind 3 other conference champions, right? It's putting them behind Michigan, and it's putting them behind Washington and Florida State. And so then you have to ask, okay, well, like, is it a head-to-head versus Bama? Is it as simple as that? You might want to think so. But then you have to ask the question about the whole, like, well, are they better? Well, if you're going to put them in instead of Florida State because Florida State doesn't look as good because they don't have their quarterback, whatever you want to say, well, then you have to start asking the question like, well, does Georgia look better over the whole season? Does Bama look better over the whole season? Are we asking best 4? Are we asking, resume? Are we asking head-to-head? I don't know what the committee's thinking. What I do know is I know the committee has a propensity for getting this thing wrong really bad. And so, so look, for me, if Texas pops up there on the graphic tomorrow, am I shocked? Not in the slightest.
Nope.
They've played a great season. They won their in the same way that I'll give Washington credit for just finding a way to win, even though it wasn't always pretty. I can point exactly over there to Texas and say, look, yeah, you barely escaped Houston with your quarterback hurt, but you won the game. And yeah, you didn't play your best game ever in Ames, Iowa, but you won the game. And you played some good games that you looked dominant. You played some games where you didn't look very good at all. And so, like, yeah, you won your games, and that's a good thing, right? You only lost the one. It was real close. It took some heroics. And so outside of some heroics, yeah, you're probably one of those undefeated conference champs. It's no question. But it is the question because is it a deserving? Is it a best teams? And either way you look at it, I think Texas might just end up in that 5, maybe 4 if they can sneak in type of thing. And so I just kind of have a feeling that they're going to be the ones left out. I think they're going to be the ones that get left on the outside. And it's not going to be fair, and Longhorn Twitter is going to burn. But it's just the feeling that I have. If
Couches
it were
might burn, cars might burn.
tent cities in Austin might burn, dirty needles on the sidewalk might burn. No, I'm just kidding. So buses that take them to their practice facilities, anyways. But it's just it's going to be interesting to see how the committee handles this, right? It's going to be interesting to see how they actually decide to deal with Texas. If it were just up to me, we'll reveal those in a little bit. But if it were just up to me, they're right on the line. They're just right there on the line for me. So that's all I'll say for now until we actually do our official rankings.
It's going to be fascinating to see just what the committee decides that they value at the 11th hour, because that's truly what it's going to be. When we show you guys in a second our thought process here, all 3 of these final 4 teams, final teams for the final spot are deserving, right? Like, it would not, like you said, Gary, it would not surprise me. I would not be appalled if any of the final 3 teams, and maybe 4, if you think Ohio State, if you're one of the people that thinks Ohio State still has a chance, I don't know how you justify that. Oh, teaser there. All right. No one saw that, right? But any of the teams that are fighting for this last spot, save Ohio State, I think you can make an argument for it at this point. You can make a valid argument for it.
Yeah.
And you can make a valid argument against, depending on what criteria you decide is the most important. So, guys, we've been teasing it long enough. Let's move on to I'll mention the scores if you didn't see them tonight. Florida State 16, Louisville 6. If Florida State gets left out, that is an absolute travesty, a sham.
We will march on the Gaylord.
We should march on the Gaylord, and we should honestly boycott the playoff, because if you're an undefeated Power 5 conference champion, what else do you need to do? You need to be in the playoff. I don't care who is available on your roster. And also Michigan dominated Iowa tonight. If you bet the under on either half, the over-under was at 0.5, and you could bet the under, and you got it. On
8
Iowa.
weeks in a row. 8 weeks in a row that the under has hit in an Iowa game.
That's stupid. That shouldn't happen. I don't like it. But I wanted to say one thing on both of these teams. A lot of people are going to do the best argument and say that neither of these teams looked particularly good. I don't think people understand like how defense works and how that's a whole half of the game that you play. Michigan shut out Iowa. Yeah, they're not good on offense. I get that, whatever. But additionally, they were playing the third best scoring defense in the country and still found a way to put up what, like 26 was it? I think that was the final score, 26. So like you still put up a decent amount of points against a really good scoring defense, only gives up like 10 a game. So that's your first thing. And then on the Florida State side, they played really good defense. They had people shut down
7 sacks.
Yeah, all night they were playing great defense. And so
against a good Louisville offense, that's not a pushover.
Very good Louisville offense. A Louisville offense who, in a losing effort, put up massive points last week against Kentucky, and that was an absolute shootout. And so when I look at this and you ask like, oh, who's deserving and this, that, the other, and well, Jordan Travis isn't playing, so they don't look all that good. First off, Ohio State won the national championship game with a third string quarterback, so miss me with that. But the second thing is like, this is still a really good team with a really good defense that should be rewarded. Does Jared Verse deserve to play in the playoff? I think the answer has to be yes.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. If Florida State's left out, we riot. So that means there's 3 locks, right? We've got Michigan locked in. They're probably the number 1 overall seed. Washington is probably going to be the number 2 seed, move up after Georgia loses. And FSU has to be a lock, in our opinion. I think that drama's just been drummed up just for clicks this week, to be honest. Like, Florida State's getting it. Now, here's the situation that we find ourselves in. Georgia went 12-0, won 29 straight, but they lose to Alabama at the 11th hour. Alabama won 12 straight games, okay, including the best win in all of college football this year, but they lost to the team that they're being compared head-to-head to. And Texas won in Tuscaloosa by 10 points. They won the Big 12, but they have the worst loss of these 3. And you have to question, what would happen if Alabama and Texas played on a neutral field right now? I think that's going to be a fair question that people are going to bring up. So, guys, if we go by best team, it's Georgia, right? And that's the criteria that has been, established by Boo Corrigan and whatever. Okay. If we're going by most deserving, Bama won the harder conference. Just that's a fact. And if we're going by head-to-head, if head-to-head truly matters, then Texas wins this rock, paper, scissors. So it's literally going to be just what the committee feels like.
This is actually a rock, paper, scissors game.
It's a rock, paper, scissors game with, it's the rock, paper, scissors lizard Spock or whatever from Big Bang Theory, where there's just
except the committee gets to decide which hand shoots and which one they like the best.
Exactly. So guys, I'm gonna go ahead and start. I'll be the one to go first here. I'll reveal my projection, and I just want to preface this with none of this is what we're rooting for to happen. I'll speak for myself. I think I speak for you guys.
Yeah.
We're not rooting for these projections to happen. We are trying to put ourselves into the room at the Gaylord Texan and Grapevine, get into the minds of these faceless committee members, and just figure out what exactly they're going to do. And we're just taking our best guess. If it offends you, I deeply apologize, but I also think you should, remember this is just all for fun. So,
but also write in. Also comment.
But also write in. Tell us how long we are.
This is actually a good thing. We got a bunch of people in here right now. Everybody right now should be commenting what they think their 1 through 4 should be, and at least what they think should happen, because we're trying to guess what the committee's going to say. We obviously have different opinions about what'll happen. I think regardless tomorrow, you're going to end up with 4 teams that should be in the playoff. Yes. You're going to find 4 teams that they've played good enough seasons to justify being in the playoff. You're also going to have 2, maybe 3 teams that say, hey, hold on a second. I deserve to be in the playoff too. And they're just going to get left out because
they're going to be right. And they're going to be correct.
They're going to be right.
They deserve to be in the playoff. So
yeah, right now, comment what you think in the chat, what you think the top 4 should be, and we'll get rolling.
This is like a Doctor Strange situation where there are
Right?
like millions of realities, and like each of them is equally possible.
We're
But
trying to guess the one that works.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, Trey, you've done an excellent job piloting us to this point. Take it away, my friend.
So here's mine. I'm gonna go Michigan at 1. I think that's a lock. Washington at 2, I think, is a lock. I think Florida State gets bumped down to 4. I think that's their punishment, quote unquote, for not looking the best with their third string quarterback tonight. I think they get bumped down to 4. Guys, I think Alabama is the team that the committee ultimately decides wins the rock, paper, scissors tournament. And again, Alabama, Georgia, Texas, I put Florida State at 4, but I mean, it's really just symbolic. Those 3 could be in any order. And in my scenario, any of those 3 could be in the 3 spot. I think Alabama personally wins the rock, paper, scissors contest. They win the conference. I think the justification that the committee is going to use, again, not my preference, not my like what I think should happen. I think the justification that the committee is going to come up with for this scenario is that game was week 2 and teams are allowed to evolve. Look at what this Alabama team looks like right now. The Alabama team of week 2, week 3 would not have beaten Georgia. They would have lost by about 25 points to Georgia, at least.
Yep.
And here we are, championship week, December 2nd. They beat them on a neutral field. So I think that's going to carry a lot of weight. I have Alabama sneaking in as that last team. So one more point I'll make about this, I keep hearing people asking, with the justification for Texas, and I think it's a valid question. Like, if head-to-head doesn't matter, why do we challenge ourselves in non-conference? Why did Texas even schedule that game against Alabama if it doesn't matter that they beat them in September? Well, first of all, Bama should be the ones asking that question, not Texas, because Texas is here in this conversation only because they beat Bama. Alabama should be the ones asking themselves, why did we schedule Texas when we could have scheduled New Mexico or Southern Miss, or heck, even a Power 5 team like Stanford, won by 50 points, and then we're the number 1 overall seed in the playoffs. So Alabama should be the ones asking that question. And second,
great point.
The question that no one is asking, and so like, why is Alabama being punished for that? And second, no one's asking, what about the SEC championship game? If that game means nothing, why did we play it today? What was the point of playing that game? If that result is both teams in the SEC are out, that game was meaningless, and the SEC should cancel all championship games going forward because it just hurts the conference, right? If Alabama and Georgia both end up out, then that conference championship game does not matter. It only hurt the conference, and that just doesn't make sense to me.
I don't know that I totally follow the logic of the second point. I think it would be unprecedented. Now, again, and we can.
Well, the logic is Georgia had no, why would they agree to play that game if losing to a top 10 team knocks them completely out of the playoff after they went 12-0?
Well, and that's fair. That's fair.
And Alabama doesn't have anything to gain because your ward is just going to the Sugar Bowl when they were already going to a New Year's Six Bowl.
That I understand. And that's what I was about to say is precedence-wise, which the committee is not supposed to take into account. This is supposed to be a clean slate every single year. We know that's not what happens, but it is supposed to be what they're instructed with. No team has ever been punished for losing the conference championship game to a degree that they dropped from a playoff seed out. Georgia is potentially facing not only the first time that's happened, but also a historic dropping from the top team in the country to outside the top 4, potentially outside the top 5, depending on who gets stiffed between Texas, Alabama, and Florida State. So set that as background. Garrett, I think we're going to roll into my predictions, and we'll roll into yours. And then I kind of want to round table this, I think is maybe the best way to do that. I think the committee is up against it. And Trey, very similarly to yours, I think Alabama is going to be that 4th team. I think they value the strength of the SEC as a whole more than they do the Big 12. I think the win over Georgia is the best win in college football this season. And I agree. I think that despite an 8th ranking for Alabama last week, Alabama will be given that 4th spot over Texas, over Georgia. Does the math add up to me? No, it doesn't. I think Texas is the team that should absolutely be crying foul here. I think Texas is a top 4 team and is the most deserving team of one of these 3 or 4 slots. The problem, Florida State didn't lose, and you needed Florida State to lose in order to get into this top 4. The math for me does not add up if you are going to bump Georgia out, but not replace them with the SEC championship. Similar to, I think, what Trey was saying. That win is so weighty. That matchup is so heavy in the rankings that I don't think you can just drop the SEC out from contention. And I don't think the playoff committee will. I tried my absolute best to get Texas in, but because you can't back Florida State out, I refuse to do that. No matter if the committee does that, I refuse to do that. That would be a crime against the sport of college football. But because you didn't move Florida State out, Texas, yes, beating Alabama in week 2 absolutely should matter. I don't think the committee is going to single in on that point and say that's what makes Texas higher than Alabama in our estimation.
Yeah, I pivoted on mine at the absolute last second. I was lockstep exactly with where Mitch was. We had the same exact graphic as of 5 minutes ago. And then something that Trey said about the rock paper scissors game, and I was thinking about what I had seen today with Greg Sankey coming out there and trying to kind of make his case for the playoffs, and it's like Sesame Street, one of these things, not like the other. I thought that was a weird comment at the time. And I was trying to like, what is he saying? Is he trying to like convince us that the SEC is better than other people? Because like, I think that's been the predominant narrative in college football for a while, but why would he come out and say that? And then, Texas kind of just keeps hovering around in all of this, and they did beat Alabama. And so you say,
and they were ranked higher in the CFP for every single poll.
Yep. And I'm looking at this and I'm trying to justify, what they're going to do here and how they're going to make this thing work. And I don't think that they can put Georgia in. That's the number one thing. I don't think you can put Georgia in at this point. You're a non-conference champion. You're picking between 2 conference champions, I think, in Alabama and Texas. And I think when you eliminate that factor, guys, I'm going to put Texas at 4. I think that you're going to eliminate Georgia because they're not a conference champion. I think they're going to put enough weight on conference championships. I don't think that Texas jumps up to 3. I think they're going to validate the 13-0s for the other 3. I think that's fair. And I don't think that Texas has a real stake to say that they should jump Florida State. I agree that they look better than them at this point in the season, but I don't think that they deserve more than them. But they won their conference. They have that trophy, and they did so in really convincing fashion. They took a dominant run team in Oklahoma State and shut them down. They took Ollie Gordon completely out of the game. They took the script away from him. And it almost looked like for a lot of that 3rd and 4th quarter in that championship game, they were kind of just playing to play. It looked like they were trying to just run clock, and they were kind of trying, but not really. And, even some of those scores, it was kind of like, whatever. Okay, we're trying to go. Okay, we hand it off, and he just escapes down the sideline. Congrats, we scored again. And I don't know. I kind of have a feeling that since Texas has looked better the last couple of weeks, and Georgia kind of struggled with Georgia Tech, and Alabama, they kind of struggled with Auburn, and they were lucky to escape, and they both played a close game yesterday, didn't put up, or I guess tonight, and they didn't put up a bunch of points, and Texas, man, they walloped the last couple of teams they played. I think they're going to reward that. I think that that's going to get rewarded. I just have a feeling that they're going to find a way to slide them in there. You can say it's for ratings. You can say it's because they deserve it. You can say it's because they're one of the 4 best teams. I don't know that you can 100% make that case in every single instance. I don't know that they're always most deserving, always the best team. but I think in most scenarios, Texas is right there at 4. So I'm gonna go ahead and slide them up to 4. I think Michigan's absolutely the best team in the country. I've been saying it for weeks, and I'm happy that they're going to finally get that validation. And then obviously Washington and Florida State being the undefeateds are going to be there. I think Alabama, Georgia get left out.
Well, Garrett, if your scenario happens, two things are going to be true. One, every SEC fan is going to be just jumping to claim Texas to say, look, the SEC wasn't let out.
Yeah, it's going to be so
Texas
fun.
has played their last Big 12 game. So that, yeah,
and
that's
Texas might be
SEC
dumb enough
team.
to actually say that too. They might be like, yeah, see, we're not with the Big 12. We booed him today. By the way, fully support that. I thought that was hilarious that they booed him off the stage. I 100% am with the Texas fans on that one. But look, yeah, go for it. Boo him off the stage. Don't claim it for the Big 12. Be like, yeah, we're gonna play in the SEC next year. We're a SEC champion. We're SEC, team that's gonna go win this whole thing. And I mean, I still think they lose to Michigan in this case, but they can go and play the game and have fun. So
last time a Texas team played Michigan in the first round, it
That's
didn't go well for the
right.
Blue. So, the other thing that's going to happen is I think the SEC might secede from the rest of college football if they somehow get left out. It would be a tough scene down south to see that happen. But like we said, it would not shock us for any of those three teams to get that final spot. I think Ohio State's out. I don't think there's any chance that Ohio State sneaks their way in. It's going to be one of these three teams. The mental gymnastics are going to be fascinating. And I do want to bring up, Austin in the chat has said, wasn't that message. I apologize. Garrett's way better at this than me. But, no one's talking about how Texas is better than they were week 2 also. And that's absolutely true. They have improved as the season has gone on. Quinn Ewers has gotten more comfortable, especially post-injury. They faced some tough tasks in the Big 12. They exercised a lot of demons in the Big 12 this year that they had not been able to do post Mac Brown. And that's really impressive as well. My only counter argument would be Bama's done that too. And I think they've done it against better competition, right? That's what I think the committee might lean on in that situation. But again, we have no idea. Who knows?
And I want to say this too. I just threw this in the chat as well. Texas has been better since they were week 2, but I don't think they've been like as better as Bama's been. I think Bama's looked more improved than Texas has. And a lot of that has to do with the injury to Quinn middle of the season, kind of derailing that momentum. I think absolutely. If Quinn was able to continue through the season, I think they would have done what they did against Tech to Iowa State. And, I know they beat BYU pretty big, but I think they would have beat them even bigger. And all these teams down the stretch and TCU, Kansas State, all those people, I think they would have stomped these teams down the stretch if Quinn was able to keep progressing. But I mean, an injury sucks. I mean, it's what happens. You can't play and you're out, and all that practice time, all those reps, all that familiarity, all that chemistry can really fade too. And so when he came back, he didn't look quite there, but he started to look like he's back. And let me tell you, this game today in the Big 12 Championship game reminded me of another game that actually happened across the street a couple of years ago, where Quinn Ewers was facing off against an Ollie Gordon-led high school team. They met in high school. The two best players on their respective teams met in high school in a playoff game late in the playoffs, and Quinn was on fire and unstoppable in that game as well. And I saw flashes of that again today where I'm like, wow, what a throw. When he gets time and he's able to sit there, plant his feet and uncork it, man, he throws a pretty ball. And I think that he has really unique arm talent in that way. Look, they can hang with the best of them. I think that you have to look at that and say, you know what, I think that they look good enough. They didn't beat teams down the stretch very convincingly, but the last couple of weeks, they are peaking at the right time. They're peaking at the perfect time. And I think that that's why I'm going to say that the committee is going to honor that as well. They're going to honor that to say this team's looked good. They beat Bama head to head. Yeah, maybe they didn't quite earn it as much. Yeah, maybe not quite as maybe it's not the best strength of schedule. Yeah, maybe the conference isn't as good, but I think they're going to honor what Texas has done on the field.
It's fascinating. You look, depending on where you look, FPI, or different strength of schedule margins, Alabama and the strength of schedule just edges out Texas, right? Both have impressive ranked wins. FPI, according to ESPN, gives Texas the edge to make the playoff as that 4th seed. Again, I don't think that's incorrect at all. I think they've got a 63% chance. Alabama has a 58% chance. It's a narrow margin, but it is still a margin. I do think Texas is the more deserving team, but I don't think the playoff committee is going to see that. I think when it comes to all of the discussions that they have, listen, Oklahoma State, congrats. We're happy you made it. You had a great season. Blowing out Oklahoma State, and they went into the half, was it 35?
35-14.
Yeah.
Okay, so scored 14 in the second half.
They took their foot off the gas.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
I wonder how much recency bias is going to outweigh that. Texas did everything that they needed to do today and more.
Mhm.
But Alabama beating Georgia, that is a powerful, powerful last statement for Nick Saban and company to give to those folks that are just a couple miles away from me over in the Gaylord. Again, I don't think they can possibly get it right. The only thing that could make it wrong, in my opinion, though, is leaving Florida State out. We haven't really talked about that tonight as much. We've talked about it in past episodes. There are a lot of folks writing for Florida State to be left out because they're on a 3rd string quarterback. My flip side to that is you just won a conference championship game against a top 15 team with your 3rd string quarterback, an 18-year-old making the first career start of his life at this level. And that defense, Garrett, as you mentioned earlier, they went to town, 7 sacks, had Jack Plummer running for his life all night. I see the positives, the advantages of Florida State coming together, being a complete team more than, hey, just a team with a great quarterback.
Well, and, I'm with you there. I've seen that. I wanted to say this too. I heard on every single Power 5 conference championship broadcast, somebody on the broadcast mentioned that, well, are they that good because they lost their quarterback? And I can't tell you how sick and tired I am of hearing that. I just don't care about that. You lost your quarterback. Cool. Are we going to leave Texas out because Worthy went down? They lost a significant starter today. Are we going to just leave him out because they're missing one of their starters?
Do we know what happened to him, by the way? Like, do we have
I don't. I saw him in a boot on crutches on the sidelines. I'm assuming he might be, in my opinion, the way he looked, he's like a miracle turnaround to make it for the first playoff game if they were to
He's got 4
weeks. They've got a month. Yeah.
He looked pretty rough. I don't know what it was.
There you go.
We're getting x-rays negative.
Yeah.
It could be soft tissue. That's the issue for me. I wasn't really worried about a bone breaking. I was worried about, snap something in his ankle or snap something, because it was what happened on the play was he was kind of heading over towards the sideline, and he had a lot of momentum running that direction. He was running kind of full speed that direction. He had a guy on him, and as he's starting to go down towards the sideline, his last little step with that foot kind of rolled his ankle over, and it looked like it was like real quick, real fast, and it rolled that thing pretty hard, and he kind of fell over the top of himself like that. So, like, I hope he's okay. I hope he can play, but right now it's speculation. Are we going to say, oh, well, it looks like maybe he can't play, so we're not going to let them go? How about this? They lost their starting running back during the season. He's not going to play in the playoff game. We're going to leave him out because they lost their star running back. I don't think that's fair to Texas, and I don't think it's fair to Florida State that you would take them out because their quarterback isn't playing. It's unfair to them. If you're going the deserving route, obviously it's unfair. But best teams, how about a stud defense, some awesome playmakers on the perimeter? You give that quarterback a couple of weeks to progress, you might have a much better Florida State team in a couple of weeks.
So, last thing I'll say on this is this, because we're 12 hours away from having the answer to all these questions. If you're a Longhorn fan, all I'll say is, we look 90 miles to your east for someone that's been burned by conference championship week on the last day before. 2020, Texas A&M beats an overmatched opponent in Tennessee on the road. It's all looking good. Notre Dame falls in the conference championship. You think the window's wide open? It's not apples to apples, but there is precedent for leaving a team with the resume of all 3 of these teams out. I will say, I think I think Texas has the most history to overcome from the committee if they're going to rely on history. I think that's where I'd be concerned if I was rooting for Texas to make the playoff. The SEC has never been left out before. Mitch, you mentioned the stat that no one's fallen out of the number 1 seed by losing a conference championship game before. There's a lot of history to overcome. It's going to be fascinating to see what happens here. So like we said, guys, we are not rooting for any one particular scenario. We're not rooting for against any team to get in, except for maybe Ohio State. That would just be a travesty. But yeah, we're right there with you guys. Just excited to see what happens. Very nervous to see what happens as well. So, guys, let's give the group of 5 some love as we wrap up our show here tonight. They had conference championship games too, and there's a lot to be decided. The committee is not just worrying about the top 4 because they have a whole top 25 to put out, and it matters before the New Year's Six Bowl, specifically for the G5. And the 3 teams that were still live, yes, Duncanville definitely deserves a shot after what they did today. They had maybe the most impressive win of the entire day. So
100%.
Listen, 3 teams were still alive, I think, going into conference championship weekend. Tulane was ranked 22nd, 1 loss on the year to Ole Miss. Liberty was undefeated, checked in at number 25. So a lot of the prognosticators said, it's probably going to be Tulane or Liberty. If Tulane wins, they'll get the New Year's Six spot. If Tulane loses and Liberty wins, they'll get the New Year's Six spot. But lo and behold, we get SMU winning pretty convincingly. It's 26-14. Pony up. They get their first unshared conference championship in 41 years. It's been since 1982 since they've had a title that they did not have to share. And they win the American on their way out going to the ACC. A program-defining win for Rhett Lashley, gets a huge bump in momentum as they head into the ACC. And on Friday night, Liberty takes care of business against New Mexico State 49-35. If you didn't catch any of this because you're watching the Pac-12, this is, that was a fantastic back and forth game. A lot of offense in that one. Diego Pavia went down at one point, and that was, unfortunate for the Aggies. But right now, it's looking like it's a 2-horse race, Liberty and SMU. Who do you guys think has the edge for that last New Year's Six spot?
I think it's SMU. Listen, this again is not really apples to apples, and Jamie Chadwell did a great job of giving his case for Liberty publicly. Undefeated conference champion. Their average margin of victory was something like 14 points over their opponents. Congratulations. I still think SMU is the better team. And listen, that is with a backup quarterback. Kevin Jennings, the hometown hero, won a state title for South Oak Cliff and brought the first UIL championship back to Dallas in like 40 years. 2 years ago, plays for the Ponies, stays home, and gives them their first conference championship in 40-something years. The movie writes itself. I think SMU is by far the better team defensively. They are a top 10 team in some statistical categories. That is a huge credit to the job that this coaching staff did in the offseason. I don't necessarily know that I could put together a composed case to present to you right now with exhibits and all. But if you're asking me to just pick which team I think is better, I'll take the Ponies.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of there too. I think SMU is the better of the teams. They beat a really good Tulane defense today. And again, with the backup quarterback, we're still able to move the ball and score points. And the thing I don't think that's getting enough love is their defense, of course, holding Tulane down. That's not necessarily an elite offense with Tulane, but their defense, held them to 14 points over the whole game. This is a good quarterback. This is a quarterback with experience. Couldn't find a way to do it against SMU's defense. I think SMU is the better team. I, for one, would love to see them go on, after, writing the preview, we're season ticket holders and all that, it'd be a lot of fun for us to go watch SMU go and find their way into a New Year's Six and have a lot of fun with it. So that's what I'm rooting for officially. But, if it is, if it's going to end up Liberty, I'm fine with that too. That's a good team that I think is plenty deserving to get their chance as well.
It would be really hard to leave an undefeated team out of the New Year's Six Bowl, right? Like they're the only undefeated G5 team. I would get it if SMU was undefeated as well. Only knock on SMU's resume is they only have 2 wins against teams with winning records this year. I don't know that stat for Liberty, but I do know they have more than 2. They're great wins over Tulane and Memphis, no doubt. And their only losses are to Power 5 teams on the road. So not a bad season from SMU, obviously, with the conference championship. I do think the committee will lean Liberty and reward undefeated teams. You're sensing a theme here with what they're going to do. And I think SMU will get rewarded with a nice bowl game against an ACC opponent and get another shot at beating a future conference opponent.
Conference preview, baby.
Exactly. So all signs are pointing up for both of these programs, regardless of their bowl destination. I think Jamie Chadwell has done a fantastic job in year 1 at Liberty. If they can hold on to him, and I think they have the funds to do it, then they're just going to continue to be on the up and up at that G5 level, fighting for that. They're going to be fighting for a college football playoff spot in the expanded playoff every year with the additional auto bid that's going to be handed out. And SMU, I think, could be a sleeping giant in the ACC. The way the schedule opens up, if they can continue to get talent into Dallas through the portal, through the high school ranks, it's going to be fantastic to see what they can do in the ACC. They're going to need to up that fundraising effort. So I keep getting hit up with emails to donate to offset the TV money, but we'll see. We'll see how that works out. Elsewhere in the G5, Miami, Ohio upset Toledo 23-14, avenged a loss from earlier in the season. And, it always seems like the favorite loses this game, right? I don't think we talked about that, but it seems like every single year, I don't have a stat to back that up, but it seems like the underdog wins this game outright more often than not. Boise, speaking of odds that we didn't really understand, we thought it was silly that Boise was favored in this game. Turns out Vegas knows what they're talking about. Boise 44, UNLV 20, all over them from the jump. Doing it with an interim coach as well. We'll see if they end up making that interim tag permanent. And lastly, the Sun Belt, Troy 49, App State 23. Shout out Kamani Vidal from Troy. 26 carries, 233 yards, and set an FBS Conference Championship game record with 5 touchdowns on the ground today. Guys, any thoughts before we close out the G5 segment?
I wanted to shout out one more time for my Red Hawks. I just love it. I got to write that preview, fell in love with the team writing it. Such a cool story, such a cool school, such a cool culture on that campus. Such a resilient team as well. Played great defense all year long, got better as the year went on. And then when Gabbert goes down, you're obviously you're sitting there saying, well, the season's over, our quarterback's out. And then for Avion Smith to come in and take care of business and help him just be good enough, right? Just be good enough. Not an electric quarterback, not, high level, but do just enough with a really, really good defense. I thought that was awesome. I thought it was awesome to watch the way that they just stayed resilient this year. And I wanted to shout them out. I put their ceiling far too low. I think I put their ceiling at like 9-3 when I wrote that. Wanted to just deeply, deeply apologize along with the rest of us that put your predictions way too low, Miami, Ohio. You should be celebrating and enjoying this, and I cannot wait to root for y'all in the bowl game. So go Red Hawks. I'm all in.
Yeah, awesome. And their only 2 losses were to Toledo and Miami, Florida, right? Mm-hmm. In the entire year. So great season for the Red Hawks for sure. Well, guys, we need to get some sleep. Garrett, you'll be back at it in less than 12 hours now. We'll be joining Cycling Through. Garrett will be captaining the ship tomorrow morning starting at 11 Central. We're live to break down the college football playoff selection show. Join us. Join our guests. We have a great lineup for you guys. Stay tuned. Hopefully we'll be able to announce that on social media before it goes live. But make sure you click the bell if you're subscribed on YouTube so that you get notified. Don't forget to join in all the fun tomorrow. Great show tonight, guys. Great comments from the chat. And I can't wait to see how this turns out tomorrow. For Mitch Mason, for Garrett Turney, for all the Jimmies and Joes out there in the chat, I'm Trey Reeves, and we'll see you next time.
Gracious him. How about